afternoon, Zeke. Thank you so much for being here. How is your Saturday going?
It is going great. You're in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. It's a beautiful day.
I was thinking about that as I was getting ready. I've never woken up in Eureka Springs. I've passed through, I've stopped for like in the evening time, but what is it like to wake up on an almost autumn morning in Eureka Springs?
It's the quietest time of the day. Most people are not up yet when I get up. So I get to hear the birds and the crickets, and the frogs are still singing. So it's a nice watch the sun come up from my front porch sometimes while drinking coffee.
Oh my gosh.
Good way to start the morning.
It sounds like a dream. I wonder, when I think of Eureka Springs, I think of, artists populating there. There being a lot of that sort of community. I'm in Bentonville, which is has definitely art influences due to places like Crystal Bridges, but it's definitely also like a very athletic town. And so they're always up early making noise and causing a ruckus. But I think maybe the artists sleep in and you get a little bit of that solitude. um, I don't know how that happens or if that's true, but that's my theory, my working theory. You'll have to let me know.
Well, sounds like a good theory.
Solid, right?
Right.
Well, without further ado, this is Zeke Taylor. You are a painter extraordinaire. You've left and continue to leave a significant impact on Arkansas and its legacy through your work. So I'm very excited to explore it today and explore your story. As we usually do, I'd like to get started, Zeke, with your personal background. You grew up in Arkansas, as I understand, or in like this area. So tell me what that was like, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I grew up on the other side of the state in the Delta, which is very different from where I live now, which is in Ozark Mountains. The Delta is low farmland, humid, real southern, and I grew up picking cotton.
Oh my
The real
God.
southern part of Arkansas. Our metro center was Memphis. All our TV stations, newspapers came out of Memphis. It was a good place to grow up. I enjoyed being there.
Wow. You mentioned last time we spoke about, I think, like the calendar year for students being dictated by like the cotton picking seasons. Can
The
you
co-
remind me what that was like? I just think it's wild.
yes, we went to school in July and August, the hottest part of the summer with no air conditioning. We started school early, 1 o'clock. We were out at 1 o'clock, but we started at 7. Tried to beat the heat, and we had big fans in our classrooms. So we went to school through August, out in September and October to pick cotton. That's when the cotton is in full force. I started picking when I was 5 years old. My grandmother took me out into the cotton patch. She made me a little pick sack out of a pillowcase. And I picked every fall until I graduated from high school. And when I started college, I was in school during cotton season harvest. And I really sort of missed it. I really liked working out in the field.
That's funny that you mentioned that. My parents both grew up in the city and now they have this farm that they escape to on the weekends. And they do a lot of manual labor that I would have never pegged my parents as equipped for, but they find it very enjoyable to be out, like mowing the grass and taking care of different, like feeding the livestock, like all these crazy things. It gives you a lot of time, I guess, for reflection. And you had, I don't remember if it was in your bio or you had shared with me that like you did use that time. You were thinking about the world. You were thinking about wanting to be an artist in some way, right? How were you even aware that that was an option?
I won my first art award in the first grade, and I did a crayon portrait of my mother.
So
And
sweet.
the prize for winning was either a peppermint stick, a big one, or a chickle stick. And I chose the chickle stick, which I ate at the first recess. But I soon realized that making good art gained a person rewards. And I thought, this is pretty cool. Plus, I love doing it. I was obsessed with coloring and making things. And I decided early on that if possible, I wanted to be an artist.
Oh, that's amazing. Such a sweet story to begin with, drawing your mom. And it's so true that what we get rewarded for actually like psychologically influences what we're motivated to do on some level. So thank you for sharing that story. I would like to understand too. So you're picking cotton, you were going to school in this different pattern to go with the cotton seasons. And then it came time, you graduated high school. What time was this in the world? What did you decide to do from there? What was that like?
Then, well, I started college in 1964, and I was 17 years old. I started school early, and I graduated early. So I was really pretty young and naive, and it was a big world, even Jonesboro, Arkansas, at Arkansas State, where I first started, compared to the little town where I grew up with 650 people. So I immediately started taking art courses, and I thought, I'm in the right place and I'm doing the right thing. It was quite a change from a rural school and picking cotton in the fall.
I'm sure. Can you tell me a little bit about those art classes and how you knew that you were in the right place doing the right thing?
I, I enjoy learning, and there were things that my instructors were teaching that I didn't have access to in the small school where I attended. Uh, Etching, pottery wheels, different forms of art that I hadn't been able to experience before. So they opened up a whole new world of art making to me. Uh, but I did stick with my love of 2D art, and eventually ended up at the Memphis College of Art as a painting major.
So was that a continuation of your undergraduate degree? Was this for another degree, or how did you?
It was in addition to my degree. When I graduated from Arkansas State, I taught public school art for 2 years,
Wow.
which was a good way to make money as an artist. But I decided that I really didn't want to teach. I wanted to paint. So I returned to school at the Memphis College of Art and delved into painting. I was a painting major there.
Wow. Um, I think it was just have been such an interesting time to be an artist, to be in Memphis. Was this also when there were, was the Vietnam War at this point, or was that later in your um story? Or which
And
there was a war that you told me about that I thought was really interesting.
I, I guess I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. I'm trying to recall from our previous conversation, maybe there was a point where there was a draft for the military,
Yes,
that you
exactly.
circumvented, and I wanted to know more about that experience.
Yes, the draft was going on, and it was during the Vietnam War. And one way to avoid the draft, I was such a pacifist that I didn't have war in my mind, something that I could do. So I taught school, and I had an occupational deferment. I thought, who knew that art teachers were that valuable? We were at the time. But a lottery came along that uh, happened when I was still in school, summer school. And during the lottery, names were drawn, and the first 100 or so men in a certain age group were eligible for the draft. Those that's number wasn't drawn, and went by birthday, were no longer eligible for the draft. And I won the lottery when that drawing happened, and I was no longer subject to be drafted. So that freed me up to uh, study art more. And it just totally freed me up. My whole life was built around staying safe and staying out of war. It
I
was an interesting time. It was a trying time. It was a time of peace loving protest.
all of the
It helped make me who I am.
Oh, I'm sure. I think about art as just a vehicle to express oneself, to express history, to document moments in time. And what I really find interesting in your art, and what I really appreciate, is that at least from our conversation and in the current day, your art is about enjoyment, is about making people smile, about bright colors and evoking positive feelings. Was your art always about that? Like during this Vietnam War time, when there was so much happening, were you still seeking that joy through art, or were you documenting what life was like? Walk me through that.
I did a little bit of both, but most of my work was joyful. I thought there was enough ugliness, strife, and sadness in the world. And I wanted to contribute something that would hopefully make people smile, give people at least a moment of pleasure. Plus, it also gave me pleasure creating that. I love color, I love whimsy. And so I wanted to share that enjoyment.
You and me both. And I think back even, further back in history, I think during like the Depression, people got joy from paying a few cents to go watch a movie, right? Like we need
Exactly.
some sort of thing to look forward to, some sort of source of dreaming that we're not going to always be in this moment. And it comes full circle with 2020 and 2021. I want to be an informed citizen, but I also need a break. Like I need
My studio is my break from that sad reality that's going on with everything in the world. But my studio, to me, is a playhouse, a place of joy.
Oh, that is so cool. I love the descriptor as a playhouse. I spoke with someone else who'll be in this season 3, and she described her warehouse as a penthouse. It's like the words we assign to things help create the reality that we see around us. And so I love the playhouse as your art studio. Your art studio is currently in Eureka Springs. Was it a direct move from Memphis and that degree program to Eureka, or did a lot of things happen between?
And at first, I moved to Fayetteville for 13 years and then to Eureka. I loved Fayetteville at the time and still love Fayetteville. It was progressive. There was a lot of art going on there, but Eureka Springs had a reputation as an artist colony, and that's where I wanted to be. After I learned that there are more working capita for artists in Eureka Springs than any other city in Arkansas. It's amazing. We have a population of 2,000, and anywhere between 250 and 400 of our citizens describe themselves as artists. So I wanted to be with my peers, with my tribe. I wanted to not only make art, I wanted to share art, talk art, have a support system, and I found it here.
Oh, that's so cool. And I definitely think artsy when I think Eureka Springs, but not in an ostentatious way, in like the most funky, groovy, sort of lovey environment that's made by the art that's there. I told you, in Bentonville, and I've not been here for many years, but people explain that even in the last 5 years, it's changed dramatically. Is it the same there? Like, is it like when you first arrived, or is it totally different now?
I always say Eureka's always changing, but stays the same, if that makes any sense at all. There's such a strong sense of community that's always been here. And there's some people that have been here for decades, but there's always an influx of new people, which adds to the energy of the city and makes it ever changing. I think that there's been a certain amount of gentrification going on. Some of the properties that needed to be renovated have been. There are more galleries than there have ever been. So I think that it's better than it's ever been. But Bentonville, it has really changed since the first time I was there. For the better. I love what's happening there.
Yes, it's a lot of fun. The traffic's getting kind of bad, but otherwise,
Yeah.
otherwise
Yeah,
it's
when I drive over there, I feel like I am in the city compared to here. We
yes.
complain here about people driving too slow, and it takes us 5 minutes to get somewhere compared to Bentonville.
I mean, I will not even bring my car near the square anymore. It's like 2 miles away. Like I'll walk it. Like it's so annoying to drive there now. But I think it's temporary. I think that we have very intentional city builders here. So I think it's just the construction. My wishful thinking is that it's just the construction time that's making the traffic terrible. And then
I think that could be true sometimes when I'm there. I'm the art director for the First National Bank in Bentonville.
yes.
So I do make frequent trips over there, and I get to participate somewhat in the Bentonville art scene because of that.
Oh, that's so cool. I had no idea, but I admire those windows all the time. That's so
Oh,
cool.
good. Yeah, I curate that art.
No way. So I love that you mentioned that. I did not know you were going to, but it makes me think about the different advantages of being an artist and a creator in Northwest Arkansas broadly. Um, with an art education and with the skills and the talent that you have, you could go anywhere in the world. But you chose pretty purposefully to remain in the state of Arkansas and in this area. Can you speak about what that has meant for your career and maybe any wisdom for other people who are in that place of making a decision?
And, well, I do love my state, born and bred here, so I decided to stay here. And when I found Eureka Springs, there's no other place in the United States like it.
Mm.
So I don't think I could ever leave here. But one thing that's really helped me by being here is my support system that I've had here. They have encouraged me, they have helped me, they've made me grow. And because of the World Wide Web, that I could get my art anywhere in the world from here. So
Yes,
I don't think a person's limited anymore by where they are when they have the whole world at their fingertips.
so
But
true. We just need a little bit
one
of
thing that some people here nominated me for the Arkansas Governor's Art Award for Lifetime Achievement. And that really was a big boost to my career. And that was because I lived here and people believed in me and nominated me and supported that nomination. So I couldn't ask for anything better to happen, and it happened because I am in Eureka Springs and in Arkansas.
That's such an amazing story and such a huge accomplishment. And I love that you tie it back to being part of community and finding people who uplift you and encourage you and see, this vision for your life as an artist, and they want to help make it happen. I think that
And
that's
they did.
why. That's awesome. So without any further time without screen sharing, I'm going to pull up your art so people can actually see all the great work that we've been talking about and referencing. I chose just a smattering of different types of work that you do, and I started with animal friends because I thought the name of this like group of works was really sweet. And these are some of my favorite animals I haven't seen in a bit because I need to go to the zoo. So these are not obviously native to Arkansas animals, and I don't think they're in Eureka Springs. Why did you paint them? How did this come to be?
I've always been a big animal lover. When I was young, I also thought, well, I can be an artist and a veterinarian. But then I found out that veterinarians had to put animals to sleep. And I thought, I can't do that. So I decided that I would be an artist and paint animals. The animals, as you can see in these paintings, have such a beautiful pattern that occurs in nature. So it's almost irresistible for me to not paint these animals. I consider myself a patternist and a colorist. And what better way to find good patterns and good color than in animals?
Right, I love that. Nature definitely has some of the most ornate and captivating patterns. Are these terms, patternist and like colorist, official things? Like, what does it mean? Or maybe it just means you love patterns and colors, which is also fabulous.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the word patternist. I don't know if I made that up or if I read it somewhere. Colorists, there are people that do consider themselves colorists. My favorite class at the Memphis College of Art was color theory. And so
Oh,
I've used that in everything I do, from decorating to painting.
can you tell me a little bit about how color theory plays into any of these pieces?
Now, color can create harmony or contrast. So depending on what I'm trying to do, I use color theory. Like in the cheetah painting, that dark blue is such a contrast with not really orange, but it makes that orangish tone in the cheetahs pop. And this just through color theory, because they are contrasting colors.
Oh,
And
wow.
color also sets moods. And some things, I think the mood of this painting is going to be blue, say.
Oh, I love that. And I think that the millennials are embracing color theory in a new way. So many people have these light bulbs that change colors now. So like in the evening, it's
Yes,
like a purple red, and like during the day, you're
yes.
brighter. And so it's cool to see how that keeps coming into play, whether we know it or not. And now I like to think I know a little bit more about it thanks to you. um,
Oh, thanks.
what I also see here is these, like, you make almost a frame that you paint around the focal piece of the animal, and they're all patterned, right? They're all very unique and intricate. And is that would you consider that like a signature of your work, or did you always do that? How did the frames come to be?
It is a signature now. I originally painted on paper and I would mat the work, watercolors. But I found this painting board that is coated with kaolin clay that accepts watercolor and acrylic both. But it was a lot more expensive than paper. So I decided to, because of the expense, that I wouldn't mat them and I would paint a border in lieu of a mat and save money that way. And after I started doing it, it was so much fun and people liked the effect. And it did become a signature, so I kept doing it. And I do love doing it. People ask me, isn't that tedious to do that and repeat the same thing over and over? I paint the interior. I do the interior of the painting first. So if I mess it up, I don't spend a lot of time on the border. But by that, when I get to the border, because it is repetitive, it's almost like meditating. There's a rhythm to it.
Yes.
So I enjoy that part of my work.
I love that. It gives you room for the creative and the design, and then sitting with it and just getting the pattern done. And necessity is so often the mother of invention. I love the story behind just really a cost savings thing that turned out to be quite wonderful for how you work.
Well, thank you.
So they look like perfectly identical, but you're really hand painting each piece of these borders. Is there a stencil? How do you come up with the design? I'm so curious.
I'm not really sure. Sometimes I'll pull a theme. I just finished a painting of a Egyptian dress in a chimp. I'm sorry, dressed in Egyptian clothing. So in the border, I used a lot of Egyptian symbolism. So sometimes I'll pull from the theme of the interior with symbols in the border. And sometimes I just make up a design.
Oh my gosh, so much fun in the playhouse doing the
It
art.
is a playhouse.
It makes sense. I believe it. I see it. So the next series I chose from your website were the florals. I loved, I don't think I followed color theory, but I put these ones here because I thought they were pretty contrasting. And they were captivating to me. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your floral works.
I'm also a gardener and a lover of flowers. I got that my grandmother encouraged me to garden and taught me to love flowers. She would let me plant in her garden and go to the seed store with her and pick out seeds and help me nurture plants. So I had a love of flowers early on. And my favorite flower is the iris. And it seems to be a repetitive image that I do over and over. I never get tired of painting them. They come in such beautiful colors and they're so free flowing and a contrast with the borders.
They're so stunning. And I'm thinking too, like, it's great to have a signature thing that also is dynamic. Like you can make two irises here, but the border gives you room to come up with a new way to encase it, and then the colors are all different. And so I imagine I can see why that would be a ton of fun in
It,
Eureka Springs.
it is, and there's so many varieties of iris. I don't think I would ever run out of material.
When you enter your playhouse for the day and you are getting ready to paint, are there days that are more iris days than animal days? Like, are you doing these by someone has asked you for a certain work? How do you structure your time in the studio?
I try to keep a variety of work because I have collectors that like certain images. So if I sell an iris painting, I'll think, well, maybe next in line or pretty soon I'll do another iris painting to fill that void in my studio, in my showroom, in my studio. And some days I just think, I really want to paint a zebra. And I wake up, I don't know why I'm obsessed with painting a certain image, but
Yes, the moment strikes you, or maybe
right.
the iris, the memory. I know that definitely compels me in the music I listen to maybe for the day, or the snacks I eat, different things like that that evoke certain feelings. You mentioned too, having a sense a little bit of, supply and demand, and also having collectors. Can you speak to what it is like to, establish a pool of collectors? Like, I think some wisdom you shared with me is that you really need to put yourself out there, right? So for people to know that your work exists. What was that like, or what has that been like and continued to be like in your career?
I studied a lot. I bought books on how to be a successful artist, art is a career. And I really tried to follow all suggestions. And I encourage artists to get out there. I tell them, they're not going to come knocking on your door. I don't care how good your paintings are. You have got to get your work in front of the public. You've got to visit galleries, gallery owners. You've got to have an online presence. And I enjoy all that part of it. And a lot of artists do not, but I think it's really necessary. And that's how I find my collectors. Sometimes, and I tell them, other people, do a show. It might not be the best show in the world, but sometimes it only takes one person. I had a man from Palm Springs, California, come to one of my shows. He bought a piece. Since then, he has bought over 100 original pieces of art, that one person. So get out there and find those collectors, because they're not going to find you unless you're out there.
Yes, I want a house tour of this person's property because I want to know where all the walls are that he's putting these.
I know. This person also has a condo in San Francisco, and he has loaned out art to family members.
So he's got.
So he has art on loan, but he wanted to own the work.
That's so special. You mentioned that you have fun in that dynamic, or you've learned to have fun in that. For someone that doesn't come naturally to, or that they're not like naturally curious about it, but they love art, they need it to eventually pay some bills so they can keep doing it. Do you have any wisdom for making it more comfortable in the selling world?
I wasn't always comfortable with doing that. I just learned to do it. I created talking points so I wouldn't stumble every time someone would ask me a question, and just learn to be in with the public. Art receptions are necessary to sell art, and people want to meet the artist. It makes the art a lot more personal. And I find when people come to my shows and I'm there, I sell more art. You need to do that. I enjoy it now.
Yeah, it's so important to have to me, I think, like, to have an online presence, to have an in-person presence, just to be there for people and engaging them means so much to the customer, the collector, as well. And it's funny, I was reading this week, so I study social work, and I'm learning different mindfulness techniques to practice with clients, or deep breathing. And the analogy they gave in this textbook was like, like all of us have the ability to learn how to take deep breaths, right? But you might get frustrated at the start of it because you were never taught how, or you're so stressed already that it's just hard to kind of get in the moment. But they related it to playing the piano. Like if you're given the lessons, you probably will be able to play Little Bo Peep like after enough
Right.
hours. Like there are ways to learn the skills that by just showing up. You have to trust that it will become second nature if you're there long enough. So I like that, and I respect that you just kept showing up and practicing your talking points, because nothing can replace that time investment.
I agree. And I encourage everyone to do that. You've got to do it. Don't be afraid.
Yes, don't be afraid. I love that you kept leaning into your animal work here, and I'm so excited to talk about the chimps because they've become maybe one of your like ultimate signature things, and they're so fun. These are two of my favorite ones. It was really hard to choose just two and not to overwhelm the page with really tiny images of chimps. So how did this become a thing?
And years ago, I've been doing them for quite a few years now. I was designing pillow tops for a decorator pillow company that was marketing the pillows nationwide. I would do a painting and they would turn it into a fabric reproduction and put it on top of a pillow. And they requested certain images. In one season, it was jungle print pillows with animal images. And one of the images they requested was a clothed chimpanzee. And it was so much fun to do and was so well received. I kept doing them, partly because I was having such a good time doing them. I got to sort of create a story with them. I got to costume these wonderful creatures. It was just so much fun. And then people did start collecting these and still do. I never get tired of doing them.
Yes, I think of, so before I realized I was passionate about art, I thought I was interested in like luxury fashion. And when you were investing in like a luxury thing, you might go to the brand and say like, what is the quintessential item from this place? Or even not luxury. If I go to Lululemon for my leggings, like the Align one is the first one you invest in because that's the signature thing. And I feel like for someone who's entering the world of Zeek Taylor's art, like you start with a chimp. Like how could you not start with a chimp? There's such a special part of your work, and you could have a chimp for every season, for every mood, for every room. Endless
well, thanks. The Halloween chimp was a commission. That painting's in New Orleans. A collector in New Orleans is a big Halloween fan, and she wanted a chimp dressed in a Halloween costume. That's how that one came about.
Oh my gosh. And what about the one on the left then? Do you remember how that one came to be?
That one I did for fun, really, and childhood memories of the stuffed animal. And of course, I had to put in little animals too. I put in a cat, one of my cats, who, when that cat was a kitten, an image of him. Just another fun piece. I just needed to do something fun.
I love that it references pop culture. I was in New York visiting my family recently, and my dad and I went to the Brooklyn Museum. There was an exhibit on, I think his name is Kaws, Kaws, but he does these huge sculptures, but they kind of look like Elmo, or they kind of look like, another like character. And in this exhibit, they reflected on how it was a way for the public to like understand the art differently or feel less intimidated interacting with the art because there was a part of it that was very comfortable and very familiar. And so I see that in the chimp that's on the left with Andy and Curious George and all the fun things.
Yeah, I have a little Curious George doll in my studio. I have a lot of props, toys, sock monkeys. That's one reason I call it a playhouse. A lot of toys that I use in my paintings.
Endless inspiration abounding, and toys and fun. It seems like a really cool place. We might have to just tour the studio one day. I'll show up in Eureka. I'll bring snacks, but I want to see.
Okay, we'll do that.
So you mentioned that I think you said the Halloween one was a commission, right, from someone in New Orleans. Is that
Yes.
is a majority of your work you do it in advance and people buy it, or is it majority of it commissions? Is it a mix? Are you open to people just emailing you and saying, I want a chimp doing this thing on that day?
I am open to that. Most of the work is sold outright. It's not commissioned. I either sell it through my website or through galleries. But I do quite a bit of commission work during this past year, during isolation and during the pandemic. I had more commission work than I'd ever had before. And I think that's because people couldn't get out and go to galleries. So they commissioned work, kept me busy. It was wonderful.
It's that's such a dream to be able to commission a work one day. Do you have any advice to someone who is commissioning a work? Like I do some social media stuff with graphic designers, and there's a line that you toe of not being overly prescriptive, because an artist, is so creative. You're going to them for that reason. Have you seen it where people are like, dictating too much into the work? Is there something we should be mindful of, or?
I'm not really sure. I like for people to see my work and for it to speak for itself. So I try not to talk too much about it, although you can do that from today, right?
Yes. Well, I hope that I get to commission something, and I'm already thinking about what my chimp might do. And
Oh, good. Yeah,
fun.
I do enjoy that. Sometimes it's a real challenge, but I do enjoy a challenge. If someone wants something that I hadn't thought about or thought might be a little difficult, I really do like the challenge of trying to create that for them.
I like that.
So whatever you think you'd like, I will give it a try.
Okay. I'm looking to the right of me is my like stationary bicycle, and I'm like, maybe the chimp will go on a bike ride.
Yeah.
That's
And
what
I have done two chimps on the bike.
okay. So we've got a framework to reference. I love the
Right.
idea of this commissioning as collaboration. It sounds like a really fun dynamic and suitable to the playhouse. So the last one I chose here was remodeling Jesus, because I think it does bring us back into where you live, Eureka Springs. Like this is, if you've been to Eureka or around it, this statue. How did this come to be? I can't wait to hear about it.
That statue looms over the town, so it's hard to avoid it.
Yes.
As you can tell already that I like to play, and I've played with this. Also, when I see something white, to me, it's like a blank canvas. I want to paint it. I don't care if it's your car, the house, whatever. If it's white, I want to paint it. And so I decided I would let the chimps paint Jesus. And I would like to do that, really do that, but I don't think they're going to let me. So in my mind, the chimps did it for me.
It's amazing. I can imagine them just swooping in one night and doing a wonderful creative job. And I think everyone would love it. I mean, I just think it's so whimsical, but also so pure and sweet, and just like a lovely thing to imagine happening one night in Eureka Springs.
Well, thanks.
um, so I'm going to stop screen sharing, and I just want to abstract a little bit. I think that your work is so compelling, and it does spark and evoke so much joy. But I want to hear from you, why does art matter? Why does creativity matter? Why do you seek out these communities that are doing art and are creative? And what keeps inspiring and motivating you to be part of it?
When I think of why art matters, I really think of what would the world be without it. I mean, there's art everywhere, and it gives people pleasure, catches people's attention. It can change their mood. But for people that are creative, it gives that necessary outlet. I don't know what I would do if I couldn't create art. And I think that's true for a lot of people. Even people that don't consider themselves artists want to join in the creation of making something that was never there before. So I think art is as important as any field of study, even though sometimes I think it's neglected by institutions, not by people. But I think if you ask anyone, do you like art? I don't think many people are going to tell you they don't. I think they also think it's necessary in their life. It does matter.
Yes, absolutely. So I'd love to ask you then, Zeke, what is your advice to people who are trying to pursue art, to creative people?
Practice, practice, practice. It's like that old saying about how do you get to Carnegie Hall? You practice, practice, practice. Same way in becoming a professional artist. I work every day. There's rarely a day goes by that I don't do something artistic. And there was a time when I would take the summer off, not paint much. And when I would get back into it, I would realize that I needed to start over on some things and catch up. So I advise people, if you want to be an artist, work at it every day, even if it's just for 15 minutes. And then the other thing I think is important is to market, learn marketing. I know it's not what most people want to do if they're in the arts, but it's really necessary. You need to learn how to approach galleries, how to get your work in front of the public, and how to be there in person. One thing I remember from studying how to be a professional artist, it was a question and answer book that I was reading, and someone had asked the author, if I have $100 to spend to promote myself, what should I do? And the author's response was, buy yourself the best suit of clothes you can, because you represent your work. And when you meet people, people want to know that you're serious, that you're successful. You are the best, your person is the best promoter of your art. So I've always kept that in mind. People do not want to buy from a starving artist. So that is not your persona. Work to be a successful artist and do this through marketing and practice.
That's such an interesting perspective, that people don't want to buy from a starving artist. And it might not be intuitive to people to realize that, they want to buy from someone who's established. I mean,
From successful, a lot of collectors, people that buy art, need to be reassured that what they're buying is a good investment or good art. And so a person needs, if you're making good art, you need to promote it as good art and as being successful.
Yes,
Yeah, people, if they think you're starving artists, they think they're going to get bargain art.
I see what they're doing. That makes a lot of sense. And I love what you said about us being the main selling point. I mean, I am drawn most to the story of the artist, to the story of why they did what they did, and part of that is the artist's ability to articulate why they did what they did. I think my background is in marketing, so maybe I go more naturally to that. How do you tell a story behind this kind of slant? But what a great encouragement to people. I mean, I think it's in all of us, and we all have each person, each artist has such an interesting, unique to them journey. And so learning how to package it, even if you're practicing those talking points to get there the first few times, is going to make a world of difference for other people to know you haven't spent their whole life walking by your side, right?
Right.
But I think too, so you mentioned it's important to do some sort of art or creative practice every day. You don't only paint, you also collect stories. And I want to make sure I don't forget to ask you about that, because I think they're so important and such a great way to capture the history of this area. So this practice you've done in this book is called Out of the Delta, right? Can you shed a little bit of light on, why you do that and how that maybe adds value to just your energy to keep creating, how it complements your other work?
I never really had been an author on my bucket list. I call myself an accidental author. The first real story that I wrote that I consider a memoir short story. I was invited to be on a NPR radio show called Tales from the South. And I was asked to be on this show that featured prominent Southerners. I thought, you got the wrong person, but part of it was they said, it's a storytelling show. And I knew I was going to be interviewed and there'd be a question and answer from the audience, but that I would also need to write a story and read it. So that was my first one. And that story was heard by 130 million people around the world, which was a pretty good incentive to keep doing it.
Which is way bigger than
And I
our
started,
foundation, right? Like, that's awesome.
yeah. So I kept writing stories and I would put them on Facebook as Throwback Thursday stories. And they were all short stories, memoirs, true stories from growing up in the Delta up until the present time. And I gained a following for my storytelling. And people kept saying, you need to write a book. And so after doing this for a few years, every week, I thought, I've written a book. So I put it together into a book. And it's been great fun. And I kept doing it long enough that I now have another book out of the Delta too.
Oh my
So
God.
it's been, and that's part of creating a presence, a persona, and to let people get to know the artist by reading their writing.
I think it's so cool. That is such a dream of mine to be able to make a book about something. And I think what you did so masterfully was you made it, it wasn't, I guess, even a goal of yours, right? You didn't mean to do it, but
No,
happened to create this structure that was, you had this like kind of expectation of other people, because you said, Throwback Thursdays, there's going to be a story from Zeek about the Delta. So there was a responsibility in it that helped you maybe to remember to get it done. It was stretched out for long enough that it didn't become overly burdensome to the point where you're like, I don't even want to do this. Like, it's not fun anymore. Which I think is also really helpful when you're trying to do a big task. You broke it up into small pieces. And then it still kept this just authentic, organic desire to share stories from your life that you wanted to remember. So it's really lovely.
it was, I think I did it the easy way. I think if someone said, sit down and write a book, I would say, no way I could do that.
Right.
So that's why I call myself an accidental author.
Oh my gosh, it makes me want to find something I could do once a week that doesn't feel like I'm writing a book, so that ultimately there's like 100 pages and
Right.
but they are really powerful stories, and just really cool insights into everyday life. I've read a little bit on your website, and I definitely encourage other people to do the same for that sort of glimpse into what it's like to be here at different times in
Well, thank you.
the world. Absolutely. Finally, I love to end on what you want people to leave knowing about you and about your work. And second part, what are you looking forward to right now?
I guess I would like for people to remember me as an artist who brought joy in their life, because that's why I create. And I always look forward to the next painting. Every time I finish one, I'm looking forward to the next one. I'm looking forward to getting the work out there and to do something new and different.
I can't wait to see the next work that you create. We're connected now. I know your website, and so I'll be staying tuned and enjoying following your journey. It is a Saturday in this world in Arkansas, in Eureka Springs. Is there anything fun happening for you this weekend? What's next after we say goodbye?
After we say goodbye, in probably 15 minutes from now, there's the Volkswagen weekend is here, and there will be a parade of a few hundred Volkswagens that will go by my house, and I'll sit on my front porch with the view and watch Volkswagens.
I mean,
Fun way to spend a
so
Saturday
cool.
afternoon.
You could not make that up. That is like such a special, such a truly Eureka Springs Saturday afternoon experience.
It is.
Oh, I hope
I
I
live
get.
on the upper historic loop, and a lot of the parades come right by my house.
Oh my gosh. My dream always when I was a kid was to run Thanksgiving Day parade at Macy's. I thought that would be
Oh,
the best. But Mayor of Eureka Springs is looking better and better each time you share a little story.
well, good. Well, come on over.
I will be there. Well, thank you so much, Zeke. It's been such a pleasure to speak with you, and I can't wait to share your story.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you talking with me today.